You save the day and lose your future. It never looks dangerous at first. A message lands, a file breaks, a client stalls, a friend cannot decide, a team freezes. You step in because you can see the clean move faster than everyone else. The relief is immediate. The room exhales. The thread starts moving again. The day survives because you carried what should have been a system. By the end of this, you will see why repeated rescue never turns into freedom. That is the first lie. The rescue feels like proof of your value, but repeated rescue is usually proof of structural failure. A life can be trapped the same way a company gets trapped, not by weakness, by talent that keeps volunteering for emergency use. The pattern is simple. You become the answer so often that nobody has to build an answer without you. Your speed protects the weakness that keeps creating the crisis. Your precision covers the absence of process, standards, consequences, or adult decisions. You think you are proving your importance. What you are often proving is that the broken design can keep surviving because you keep feeding it labor. This is why the most reliable person in any system is often the least free. Reliability sounds like status. In low-leverage environments, it becomes a leash. The more often the pressure moves through your hands, the more the structure learns it can stay unfinished and still function. You feel this before you explain it. The shoulders go hard before the phone lights up. The jaw locks when the same avoidable problem returns wearing a new outfit. You do not feel proud anymore. You feel drafted. You start waking up already behind because some part of you knows your day will be eaten by repairs that should not exist. The deepest trap is not workload, it is identity. Once a room learns that you can metabolize disorder, it stops seeing you as a person with direction and starts seeing you as emergency capacity. That is a catastrophic conversion. Your intelligence is no longer treated as something that should scale. It is treated as something that should absorb impact. People call this being needed. Needed is one of the most dangerous compliments in a badly designed life. Needed often means the architecture stayed primitive because your body kept bridging the gap. Look at how this works in real time. The same kind of text keeps arriving with different costumes. Can you just look at this? You explain this better. Nothing moves unless you touch it. I knew you would know what to do. Those lines feel like trust. Most of the time they are routing language. The task is being moved toward the person least likely to let it fail. That routing becomes a system long before it becomes a conversation. It changes how people plan around you. They stop preparing because you will recover the missed piece. They stop learning because your response time makes their improvement optional. They stop respecting your bandwidth because your last 10 rescues taught them that your limits are elastic under pressure. You are not being asked for occasional excellence anymore. You are being positioned as permanent redundancy. This is where the first real cost appears. Immediate cost is always visible in the body. Lunch disappears. Your own work gets delayed. A simple afternoon turns into a salvage operation. You move from what compounds to what merely prevents collapse. By evening, you have done a lot and built almost nothing. That is why you can end a full day feeling strangely absent from your own life. Effort was spent, nothing durable was advanced. Most competent people misread that feeling. They think the answer is rest, better boundaries, or clearer communication alone. Those matter, but they do not reach the center of the trap. The center is leverage. A life becomes smaller when more and more of your effort is spent in one-to-one rescue instead of one-to-many design. One-to-one labor can feel heroic because you can point to the saved moment. One-to-many design feels slower and less dramatic because it prevents the moment from existing again. But only one of those creates freedom. This is why the problem you keep solving begins to own you. The problem now has an incentive to stay alive, not because anyone sits in a dark room planning your exhaustion. Simpler than that, human systems protect whatever keeps pain tolerable in the short term. If your rescue is the thing that keeps pain tolerable, the surrounding structure will unconsciously defend your rescue and postpone architecture. It will reward the firefighter and starve the engineer. The reward is subtle: more trust, more access, more dependency. More we need you on this, more reputation for being the one who can handle it. That sounds like upward movement, but look carefully at what is compounding. Is your influence compounding, or is your interruption load compounding? Is your freedom compounding, or is your indispensability compounding? Those are not the same curve. One builds scale, the other builds captivity. The person trapped in this pattern usually has one private fantasy. They think that if they keep saving enough things, eventually someone will recognize the depth of their value and give them more power, more money, more peace, more room. Sometimes that happens for a moment. More often the opposite happens. The structure reads your rescue as available surplus. You do not get extracted from the chaos. You get assigned closer to it. That is the conversion cost. Your capability gets reclassified. It stops functioning as leverage and starts functioning as shock absorption. You are no longer the person who should be protected from low-level disorder. You become the person the disorder is sent to. This is why some people get more responsibility without gaining more authority. The title changes. The pattern does not. They are not being elevated. They are being wired into the unstable part of the machine. Watch what happens to your decisions when this stabilizes. You stop choosing work by importance and start choosing by urgency. You stop building for later and start triaging for now. You stop thinking in systems and start thinking in interruptions. The mind narrows. The nervous system gets addicted to the tiny reward of immediate relief. Even when you hate the cycle, part of you starts craving the hit of usefulness that comes from being the answer. That is how the trap gets inside your identity. You begin to confuse being central with being powerful. Central is not the same as powerful. A bottleneck is central. A hostage is central. A single weak bridge in a city is central. Centrality only means things must pass through you. It says nothing about whether that position is good for you. Power is the ability to set terms, shape flow, and reduce unnecessary dependence. If everything depends on you, you may not have built power. You may have built a very flattering prison. This is where disciplined people separate from merely dutiful people. Dutiful people feel morally obligated to keep relieving visible pain. Disciplined people ask a colder question. Does this action reduce future dependence or deepen it? That question changes everything. It exposes how much apparently noble effort is just expensive repetition. A mother who keeps rescuing every forgotten task can call it love while training helplessness. A founder who answers every minor issue can call it leadership while training a company that cannot think without proximity. A friend who interprets every conflict for everyone can call it care while becoming unpaid emotional infrastructure. A high performer who keeps fixing broken execution can call it excellence while teaching management that process failure is affordable. Different arenas, same law. Repeated rescue turns your strength into public utility. Public utility is useful to everyone except the thing being used. Utilities do not choose the weather, they absorb it. Utilities are judged most when they are absent. Nobody praises the power line for having a soul. They only notice when it stops carrying the load. If you let your life be classified that way, your highest quality will be experienced by others as background entitlement. This is why resentment starts appearing in people who once loved being helpful. They think they became bitter. Often they became accurate. Bitterness is not always pettiness. Sometimes it is your system finally noticing that your effort is being consumed in a low-return architecture. You are not angry because you did too much once. You are angry because the structure learned from your generosity and upgraded its appetite. The body keeps perfect books on this. Your hands go still before you answer. Your stomach drops when a familiar name appears with no context. Small delays fill with dread because you already know the shape of the request before it arrives. That is not laziness. That is a physiological audit. Your body is telling you that repeated rescue has crossed the line from contribution into capture. Most people try to solve this with cleaner language. They promise themselves they will just say no more often. That helps at the surface, but refusal without redesign creates a new problem. The same demand returns because nothing in the system changed. A refusal can protect a day. It cannot by itself stop recurrence. Recurrence stops when the architecture changes, the cost gets exposed, the flow gets rerouted, or the consequence of other people's underdevelopment is allowed to remain visible long enough that someone finally has to own it. That is why one clean refusal feels powerful, but repeated redesign feels sovereign. Sovereignty is not saying no every hour. Sovereignty is building a life where the same stupid crisis cannot keep buying access to your best energy. Once you see the mechanism clearly, some requests lose their glamour immediately. The next fake emergency will not feel like destiny. It will feel like a routing attempt. That recognition is power because you stop entering the scene as labor and start entering it as judge. To do that, you have to stop feeding the hero fantasy. The hero fantasy says your worth is proven by how much collapse you can absorb without complaint. That fantasy is loved by immature systems because it lets them outsource adulthood to whoever has the strongest spine. It also flatters you just enough to keep you participating. You get to feel exceptional while your future keeps being mortgaged to prevent other people's friction. A colder standard is required. Measure your usefulness by what stops needing you, not by what keeps summoning you. Measure intelligence by what reduces repeat chaos, not by how elegantly you can survive it. Measure care by what builds adult capacity in others, not by how beautifully you can spare them the cost of not having any. This is where many people panic, because if they stop rescuing at the old rate, some relationships, teams, or identities will shake. Good, let them shake. Hidden dependence only becomes visible when relief is withdrawn. The instability you witness after stepping back is not proof that you were wrong to step back. It is proof that your labor had been silently replacing structure. The dangerous moment is the middle, not the first refusal. The middle, the part where the problem is still alive, the new architecture is not fully built, and everyone suddenly looks at you with the old expectation. This is where weak self-concepts collapse. They rush back in to prove they are still good, still loyal, still useful, still needed. And the old machine closes around them again. You need a colder identity than that, not cruel, not detached from reality, just colder than the manipulation of urgency. Your value cannot keep being measured by how quickly you abandon your own agenda to repair everyone else's unfinished one. That is not leadership. That is trained availability. A person who is building leverage sounds different. They ask what repeats. They ask what should have a rule, a boundary, a document, a standard, a consequence, a handoff, a delay, an owner. They are willing to let the first few rounds feel slower because they understand compounding. They know that 10 dramatic rescues impress weak minds more than one boring structural fix, but they also know which one changes the next year. This is why mature power often looks less impressive day to day. It is less theatrical, less immediately lovable. less full of little emergencies where everyone can clap when you saved the moment. Mature power prevents moments from needing applause. It creates conditions where your energy is spent on direction, not constant repair. There is also a private grief in leaving this pattern. Some part of you built your identity on being the one who could hold more than other people. That identity gave you rank. It gave you self-respect. It gave you a clean reason to feel superior in rooms where others were more chaotic. Letting go of rescue can feel like losing your edge. In truth, you are losing a costume. Your real edge was never the willingness to blade for disorganization. It was the ability to see structure. The trap was that you kept donating that vision in labor form instead of forcing it to exist as architecture. That distinction matters. Labor evaporates when the day ends. Architecture remains when you leave. Labor ties your worth to your presence. Architecture gives your thinking independent force. Labor is praised as sacrifice. Architecture is often resisted at first because it removes excuses. That resistance is one of the clearest signs that you are finally doing high-value work. When people benefited from your rescue identity, some of them will accuse the redesign of coldness. They will say you changed. They will say you used to care. They will say it was easier before. All true. It was easier before for everyone living off the old arrangement. Easier is not the same as healthier. Easier is not the same as sustainable. Easier is not the same as worthy of your life. The adult move is not endless generosity. The adult move is accurate allocation. Some things deserve your full effort because they create assets, capability, trust with terms, cleaner flow, stronger future. Other things are just recurring leaks wearing the language of urgency. If you cannot tell the difference, your discipline will always be consumed by whatever shouts first. This is why being overneeded is not a compliment. It is a signal. It means some combination of poor design, weak ownership, mispriced access, and your own rescue conditioning has built a system around your responsiveness. That system will not dissolve because you silently resent it. It dissolves when you stop confusing relief with progress. A strong life must become harder to interrupt and easier to scale. Harder to interrupt means not every loose screw gets your best mind. Easier to scale means your effort starts producing standards, filters, terms, and consequences that reduce repeat dependence. The point is not withdrawal for its own sake. The point is to stop spending rare energy in forms that die the same day. You can feel the difference immediately. One action leaves you drained but admired. The other leaves you temporarily unpopular but structurally safer. Weak environments train you to choose admiration. Strong people eventually choose structural safety because they know admiration from dependent people is usually rent paid in compliments. The final regime cost arrives quietly. Once repeated rescue has defined you for long enough, people stop imagining a version of you that gets to build a larger life. Your ambition becomes background noise. Your own long work becomes negotiable. Your best hours become publicly interruptible. You are not only overused, you are narratively shrunk. The system cannot picture you outside the role it built on your availability. That is why this pattern must be treated as a scale problem, not a mood problem. You are not merely tired. Your life is being kept in a low-leverage shape. Your days are being cut into pieces too small to compound. Your mind is being trained to respect interruption more than direction. And every time you rescue the repeat problem without changing the repeat condition, you vote for the smaller version of yourself again. Stop calling that virtue. It is expensive drift with applause on top. The cleanest test is brutal. If you disappeared for 2 weeks, what would break once and what would finally get built? The answer tells you whether your current helpfulness is creating capacity or financing avoidance. A person committed to growth wants more things built. A person addicted to being needed wants more things breaking. You do not escape this by becoming less capable. You escape it by making capability harder to consume in raw form. You let slowness reveal weak ownership. You return tasks to the point of origin. You force missing structure into visibility. You accept that some discomfort must remain untreated long enough for adults to feel the bill. You stop being the soft surface that every hard thing gets thrown against. That is the real shift. You move from emergency labor to governing terms, from rescue to design, from centrality to leverage. From being the one who saves the day to being the one whose life is no longer available for preventable collapse. The people who only loved your usefulness will call that distance. It is not distance, it is price. It is the moment your effort stops being loose cash on the table and starts being allocated by law. You are not here to become a better container for other people's recurring failures. You are here to become too structurally expensive for avoidable chaos to keep renting your future. Stay with this channel if you'd rather understand the structure than admire the performance. The day you stop proving your value through rescue is the day your life can finally begin to scale. Until then, every emergency you save is teaching the world how small you are willing to stay.